Good afternoon from sunny New York City. My name's Nikki and I look after marketing and communications for Insight Partners. And today, when marketers come together, I'm really excited to introduce you to Gary Service, who is the operating partner and someone I talk to on a daily basis about marketing strategies as he leads our Marketing Center of Excellence, which is one of the groups within Onsite, Insight Scale Up Engine. So Gary, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to get your point of view on all things scale up marketing.
Of course, and it's the most fun for the marketer to talk to the marketer because we can do this.
Meet on the same page. I was actually going to say we should change the title of this when two marketers walk into the bar, because Gary is also a bourbon aficionado for anyone who's watching us live. But today, Gary, I want to talk about the Marketing Center of Excellence and really about how we think about leveraging marketing best practices to help our portfolio companies scale up. So for those who are watching, Insight Partners invest in the world's leading scale-ups. These are companies that are graduating from the startup phase, and they're really going through that professionalization of their operations. And there are a lot of things to think about, and marketing is a critical piece of that. So Gary, you've been with Insight, I think 5.5, 6 years, something like that. Somewhere like that. So tell me a little bit more about Onsite and your COE specifically.
Sure. The way I like to talk about Onsite is to say, first and foremost, we are not consultants. That would be a huge mistake to say we're like a consulting arm of Insight. Mm-hmm. And we clearly don't work at the portfolio companies because they're doing their job and they're the ones that really need to work in making marketing successful in all the different areas within the centers of excellence. I think what Onsite is what I call a tweener, which is, definitely not coming in and looking as a consultant does to sell their next job, because quite honestly, I'm busy enough working with 240 portfolio companies. But we have special permission, because we're on the same side of the table as the portfolio company, to really be able to dig in deeper, sometimes give tough love, and really work in a outcomes basis. So my team is a group of marketing professionals, all kinds of skills: product marketing and demand gen and channel and analyst relations and all the pieces. And I have colleagues in the sales center of excellence who have folks that are equally strong in their vertical and the same in product and the same in talent. And this is a unique way for Insight to interact with our portfolio companies as we are going through that journey with them, that scale up journey. And I think the other thing that's cool is we have incredible folks who are on our deal team that are super smart about strategy, super smart about finance and M&A and markets that they are trying to build for this organization, and great strategic advisors to CEO. My job and my colleagues' job are to be the same sort of advisors, not just to the CEO, but also to the person within that vertical. And you and I both know, Nikki, being a CMO is a lonely job, and having someone to talk to that understands and has done it is really what we're about.
And so that's where I want to go next. Someone who has done it. And I think that is such an incredible lens to be that trusted advisor and to come in and work alongside the portfolio. Because before you were an operating partner, you were and you have held the CMO position. How has the role of CMO evolved, and particularly how has it evolved for software scale-ups?
Yeah, there's a few things that I think about marketing, and one of them is what I'll call, and this in your role, as a super truism. Everything ultimately ends up at marketing's doorstep. And it's like, oh, we just did a great partnership deal. Can you figure out how to go to market with that? It's always, we're now launching a new product. Awesome. Marketing can help us figure out how to talk about that. And I think that, part of our job is to be the ones that are able to really be not chief marketing officers, but chief market officers, to be the ones that truly, truly understand the market And so one of the things that I talk about all the time is the role of marketing today is not to just deliver leads, not to just deliver opportunities. Our job is really to unlock TAM. Like, we talk about this as this amorphous thing of this massive TAM, but the reality is there's only a portion of that TAM that your organization can actually own. And our job is to give the strategy and tactics to really be able to unlock that. And I think that that is really one of the changes that's happening in successful chief marketing officers. And the way I look at things today is really, what are we doing to deliver more TAM for the organization?
That's a great way to think about it. And I think to unlock that market and to really capture that TAM, there are so many different levers that you have to pull and do it all at once. And so that's, you mentioned briefly, and I'd like you to dive a little bit more into the expertise and sort of the different program elements that you'll support on within the COE. Because you rattled off a lot of them. So I heard AR, I heard product marketing. Can you dive into a few more of those specialty areas, and
Sure.
Why do they all matter for the modern marketer?
So, we have an engagement model which says, if you're working with a scale-up organization, the first thing we want to get right are foundations. And foundations are across all of marketing. And this is what, the way I like to think about it is, these are the things that you absolutely don't want to break as you double in size and double in size. So this is going to be your MarTech stack. It's going to be your org structure, the quality of the people, your marketing budget, where you're spending it, how you're allocating it, understanding all of these pieces here that are foundation. Do you have the kind of reporting and KPIs that allows you to optimize marketing? You don't want to be flying blind, because as you spend more money, it gets more difficult to actually know what's working, what's not working, and what to tune. So that's foundation. And then we start moving into some real specifics, because some folks need strategy, and they need folks that are experts at messaging and positioning and creating categories. And so a group of our folks will be able to do that. We've got other organizations that are really struggling to figure out product marketing. And I really look at an organization very carefully as, we got to get demand gen right, and we got to get product marketing right. And my team is set up really to answer those two questions. One, what do we need to drive demand gen through demand gen expertise? And how do we help product marketing, the messaging, the positioning, all of the tools, content, to basically say, hey, do we know where to hunt and what to say? And if I can get all of that answered, I've got to have a team that's able to answer all those pieces. Then there's a ton of other things. This, marketing is not one single thing. It's complicated. So some folks are really dealing with COVID and not understanding what to do with live events, and they want to understand how virtual plays a role and what's going to happen when we're done with COVID and people want to go back to live events. What should I be doing? That's another area which we spend a ton of time. Sometimes it's about a specific strategy like account-based. Everyone likes to talk about account-based, but how do you get an organization to orchestrate between marketing and sales and customer success and really deliver on those targets? So we're busy.
Something that I really value, which I leverage, is you not only do you have the expertise within your team, but you also have a lot of data-driven assets and benchmarks and playbooks from across the portfolio. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but can you give me a little bit more insight into that? Because you raised it, your team had an incredible stat about, average spend that scale-up software companies are spending on events. And I use that to kind of ground my own thinking, and it's so valuable.
Yep. So one of the things that I will talk as a former CMO is, I always felt there was a dearth of great data that I could rely upon. Like, I could always get a benchmark. Like, I can Google just like the best of them to find that benchmark. But then there's that question of, is it relevant to me? Like, how do I know that that number is a worthy number for me? And so one of the beautiful things about Insight is we have the scale with the number of portfolio companies we have and the number of interactions we have with our portfolio to be able to gather data from a really amazing cohort.
Mm.
And that data then can be sliced and diced in ways that make it relevant. Because I want to know, for companies with a similar ASP, am I spending correctly? Or maybe I want to know, for companies of a certain revenue size, am I spending correctly? Or maybe I want a cross-cut of revenue and ASP to see how that looks. Like, we bring all that data to life. But the really cool part is the next thing that we do is we don't say, like, isn't this just awesome to know this? We then take, for example, with this budgeting data, and we then push it on over to a spreadsheet where you put in your booking number for next year, and then you see the ranges that you should be doing across headcount, across the spend that you should be, how you should be allocating the spend. And for someone who is trying to figure out their budget, and most importantly, justify that budget to a CEO, justify that budget to a board, we give them the ammo to be able to do that. So we not just give you this sort of beautiful academic, report out on data, we give you a way to activate that data in your planning and actually help you do your job better.
I mean, that gut check and data is just so incredibly valuable. So two things. My colleague Brandon is going to put, for everyone listening live, he's going to put a link to a data report that we did on scale-ups. And within the deck, there is a really valuable deep dive into the way that the Marketing Center of Excellence views scale-up marketing. But we also have a question from the audience. I love being live. So Gary, are you able to get as good quality metrics for ROI for account-based marketing versus traditional lead to account? Does account-based marketing cause issues with things like GDPR or California privacy?
Two very distinct questions. We'll start first about reporting and showing ROI. So we spend a ton of time with this, and we're actually in the process of putting something together for our portcos, which I think is going to be super cool. There's a need for organizations to work through the combination of a traditional volume velocity funnel with an account-based funnel and be able to show to the organization where they're making progress against each, because you're spending money. And to lump everything together as leads or cost per lead is actually useless, because I want to understand, for the money that I'm spending on, let's just, to simplify it, my commercial space, which is a volume velocity play, am I getting the return on that? And how does that impact my funnel? But I also want to know from some really important places, like, for example, my chosen accounts, am I engaging them more? Am I moving them through the funnel? Am I actually having more opportunities created out of that? Because now I'm not just focusing on lead success, I'm actually focusing on account success. Now that funnel may come together in opportunities, and those reporting metrics may come together in opportunities, and then we're going to work those opportunities. But up until that point, marketing's got to understand that. And so we're creating a different dashboard that shows a combined view of how you should be thinking about that. So that's something working. When we get that together, we'll probably push that out as well to a larger public. Let's just talk about
everyone who's watching, make sure you're signed up for our newsletters and check out our blog. There's so much data there and so much information. Okay, so the next point, Gary.
Yes, so privacy and account-based. So we can't have that conversation without talking about several things. And I always start out by saying this, and you'll appreciate it, Nikki. Wait for it. I'm not a lawyer, nor am I giving any legal advice. So what I wanted to say was the first thing that you got to start is where you're driving your account-based strategy. There's a huge difference, no matter what is going on between the United States and EMEA and the EU, in terms of what you can do with data, how you can deal with the data. And of course, we have all kinds of issues with Privacy Shield right now in terms of being able to move data between them. But for simplicity's sake, I will say account-based across the board and with our portfolio companies is a very important strategy that people use in every market. Yeah. The tactics are slightly different. the amount of intent data that I can leverage in driving my strategy is going to be different. But when we talk about account-based, we make it very clear. In and of itself, account-based is GDPR compliant. The issue is always around the tactics of how you deploy that. And then I'm going to give you one sort of like power tip. When it comes to GDPR and CCPA, the issue really is also about, hey, how much risk is my organization going to take? And by the way, the organizations are across the spectrum. Some are like, our chief legal person said, this, and we're living by that.
Yeah.
Others are like, well, that's hamstringing our ability to do marketing, and marketing has to fight a little more and has to show some more information and data. Like, I've got companies in the cybersecurity space. One of them is saying absolutely, one of them saying absolutely not, and it's really a point of view. And I wish it seems like it's like, oh, it's like this. It's super gray.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I've always admired about you and the team that your team's work is you always, and we've got a ton of questions, I'm going to get to them, but you always start with a goal and then you fill in all of the different marketing tactics to achieve that business goal. And that's what makes, to your point, there are so many different tools that marketers can leverage, but you do need to map that back to the business goal to show ROI and efficacy of the work that you do. So before I dive into some more of the questions, can you just give me a quick overview of a marketing 360, which is your way of first engaging with a portfolio company to make sure that what you deploy or what you encourage them to deploy is going to work for the business?
Yeah, a 360 for us is not an assessment. We never look at it as an assessment. A 360 scale-up review is always about uncovering opportunities. So as we sort of think about an organization, every one of our portfolio companies have different opportunities in marketing. And our goal is to do a full view of marketing. That means let's do a deep dive into demand gen. Let's look at your brand. Let's look at every aspect of analyst relations and all the other aspects of it. But in the end, the job is not us to say, this is what you should do. The job is really for us to work with the portfolio company and craft a really prioritized list of opportunities that are going to move the dial in marketing. We can always fix something. Like, marketers are always fixing something. I don't like my data here. I don't like my results there. I wish I were stronger here. That never changes. But what are the things in the organization that are needle movers? That's what a 360 ultimately delivers.
And I think that that's something, and we're going to go to some questions that everyone who's listening, you can deploy within your own organization. It's very helpful when you have an investor like Insight that can bring in experts, but having that introspective to really map out what tactics you can deploy, it's something all of you can really take back to your org. So we've got a question here for a startup, and we do talk a lot about the startup to scale up graduation point. A big hurdle in marketing is creating that trust factor with customers. How do you think about that trust factor, and how do you encourage earlier stage scale ups or startups to think about trust and build trust?
Yeah, so I'm going to sort of answer the question. So what I mean by that, I think trust is built off of legitimacy first. Like, you need to be viewed as a legitimate player in the space that you're competing. And I'm going to start on one area that creates that legitimacy. And some people ask me this question all the time, like, is it too early for me to engage with analysts? If you're in the B2B SaaS space, it's never too early. Because part of what the analyst's job is to learn, like, what's new, what's happening, where's the direction of this space? They know it's not stagnant. And so when you get an analyst to mention you, to speak about you, not put you in a magic quadrant, not, write a whole report about you, but really just put you in the space and your point of view in there, that creates legitimacy. And that legitimacy is what then allows you to start building trust. Because I'll tell you a funny comment. One of the great things about Insight is that we can bring CIOs and CISOs to work with our portfolio companies through our Ignite group. And one of the things, we have currently a CIO in residence, and he was doing a session just with the marketing COE. Like, we couldn't wait to ask him like every question about this. And he goes, if I believed every promise of productivity gain that software companies pitched to me, I'd have no one working for me. And it's the reality is you have no trust when you come in and you make claims that, will reduce your workload by 50%, will increase your ROI by 300%. Like, no one believes that. No decision maker believes that. And that doesn't create legitimacy. Back to, the word I'm choosing to use versus trust. Trust is earned, as always, but it is earned by having a legitimate toehold where that they can believe you and they can begin to trust you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And this actually flows into another great question, because legitimacy, and I always talk about validation in conversations that you are not driving. When I'm not in the room, who are the influencers and who are the others that are validating and bringing legitimacy to my business? They're critical. So the next question was, so how do you view marketing and demand gen activities compared to communications, internal comms, PR, IR? So that's kind of continuing what you're saying there. But what are some of the best practices for how those two different focus areas are structured and aligned?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's super important to recognize is while we have something we call a reference architecture for a marketing organization, it is exactly what I just said, a reference. I'm continually amazed at the different sort of business challenges that demand a different organization in order to really meet that need. And so when I think about the question of like, where should I put, internal sort of communications and corporate brand against traditional demand gen and messaging that's going out there? I think there are a lot of different models. I'll talk about two different ways to think about it. So the first way to think about it is, if you believe that you have the right person to have a corporate strategy and communications group, this is hopefully the keeper of the brand. This is the person and group that have responsibility for ensuring that there is a overarching umbrella messaging that resonates all around the world, that is who you are, that talks about the business you are, and communicates that regularly. Communicates that through PR, communicates it through IR, communicates it through AR. Okay? That would be a great group. And that piece is the foundation that demand gen then takes off from it. And so in that idea, when we typically talk, that's the base of every organization. You got to nail that, because we see many organizations, especially scale-up organizations, that haven't quite nailed that portion yet. And then they want to go with like tactical messages and wondering why they're so splintered. And no one understands, and salespeople aren't consistent. Like, that's why it didn't start there. So if I had my druthers and I had enough people, I would absolutely create that beautiful strategy and brand area. But many scale-ups don't have that luxury. They're constrained on headcount. So then it becomes important that the leader of marketing, I always put it in the leader of marketing's responsibility to shape that. And so, if you ask me, who am I going to hire first? I'm going to hire demand gen, and I'm going to hire product marketing, and then I'm going to hire marketing operations. Those are like my order of hiring. I need to get some of this stuff in the door, some leads. I need to know how to talk about it, and I need to know how to measure it. That's like my basic marketing org structure. But the person who's leading marketing, whether it's a CMO, a VP of marketing, whatever it is, that person probably is going to be the keeper of the brand. That's going to own all of those communication levers. And you're probably going to need to leverage some third parties in order to have the amplification you need, because if it's your side hustle as a leader of marketing, you're probably not doing enough.
That was a great answer, and I think I hope it was helpful for those that were listening. And so we're talking about scale up strategies and why marketing is absolutely critical as you are growing your business. And so we have two other questions which I'm going to merge into one, which is really the role or the relationship between marketing and sales. And I know that we actually had a whole summit about it in 2019 about how sales and marketing get along. And I know it's of consequence to you. So I'm going to start with, do you see inside sales and lead development reps now sitting in marketing or sales? And then the follow-up to that is kind of, what are some of the more best practices that you're seeing come out of better interlocking sales and marketing?
Yeah, lots to unpack there.
Lots to unpack.
So when you talk about existential questions about where your SDRs should sit, I can't tell you there is a best practice. I can tell you there are skill sets of leaders of marketing that are great at leveraging the inside selling team. And there's some that aren't. And maybe that should be part of the selling organization. And I know that's sort of a non-answer there, but I do want to make the point of the real issue here, and get to a little bit of the second part of the question, because it really will help answer the first part, is when you think about, and I just read a great blog post by one of our CMOs at Recorded Future, Tom Wentworth. It's called the Attribution Hunger Games. And what he's talking about is basically, how is it possible, for marketing and sales to be taking credit for all of these same things? It's like Hunger Games, and it's like there's only one winner. And that's not what this is about. And if you think about account-based as an example here, that is the true interlocking of marketing and sales. And actual attribution isn't helpful, because if you're doing it correctly, marketing knows its role, sales knows its role, and it's not like the proverbial passing of the baton. Marketing is going to turn it over to sales, because if that's the way your organization looks at it, you're missing the opportunity to really drive full funnel. And marketing can help accelerate. I hear all the time, we're stuck in the middle of a funnel. Well, part of the problem maybe is that marketing isn't participating. They're not assets that are designed for mid-funnel. And that only happens when marketing and sales are talking regularly about the goals, not marketing's goals, not sales goals, but what is the goal for the company? And so, a great example is lead scoring. Some organizations want to put lead scoring in place, and they say, okay, marketing team, I know you have the Marketo instance, so can you figure out what our lead scoring model should be? Surest way to hell. Because the only thing that's going to happen from that is someone in sales is going to say, I hate the leads that marketing is sending me, as if they have no responsibility. So one of the things that we recommend is that you create what I call a lead scoring council. You have the marketing folks in there, the sales folks, the inside selling team folks, and there's a regular discussion about, I like these leads, I don't like these leads, here's why. Marketing doesn't want to pass crappy leads to sales. I feel really confident in saying that. So we should be talking to fine tune that and drive it, but not as marketing's responsibility. It's marketing and sales having that responsibility.
I have a great idea. I'm going to get you and Pablo, the operating partner on our Sales Center of Excellence, back together. And we'll do a LinkedIn Live about how marketing and sales teams are increasingly working together. Brandon also just put the blog that Gary was mentioning from Tom Wentworth in the chat. So make sure everyone, you check that out as well. And please feel free to continue to add any more questions for those who are listening in live. So I have a question for you, which is kind of maybe synthesizing all the different types of questions and all the different things that CMOs are involved in. You work with a lot of them, a lot of CMOs across the world. What, for scale up CMOs, so really that most critical and difficult period of growth, what's keeping you up at night as a CMO?
Yeah, there's lots of things that keep me up at night. It doesn't mean just because I'm a CMO, it's just like I worry about everything. And, it's sort of, it's interesting that when we talk about organizations and scaling up, and like what makes a successful CMO. And one of the things that makes a successful CMO is lack of drama, no surprises. Like the CEO hates surprises, the board hates surprises. Surest way to lose your job is to give unpleasant surprises. And maybe upside surprises are good, but like the downside are not that good. And so like the thing that keeps me up is like, do I really know what's going on? Do I have full visibility into my organization? There's a lot of complexity to the numbers. And like, if I don't really understand the numbers well, what I end up dealing with is something like, well, I got this large sort of overarching number for the organization, but is that because the geo issue is off because like APAC isn't performing, or is it a product issue? Like, oh wait, product X is knocking it out of here, but product Z is kind of dragging me down. Like, am I able to get to the root cause? And so that's why I'm saying that full visibility is like, what am I missing? Definitely keeps me up. Second thing is, am I spending my budget in the right place? We're always making a guess. And I told you, we give you these great benchmarks, which is awesome. But then there's like a need to like figure out is like, should I be doubling down on this? Have I created a demand gen engine? Should I be asking for more money in order to drive even more? Like those things always keep me up. And the last thing is my team the right team for the journey? Like, are these the folks that are going to get me where I need to be? And I say this to CMOs all the time. I know you want to be a great leader and advocate for your team. But in the end, if you don't have the right people on your team, you're the one that's going to be held accountable for it because they didn't deliver. Mm-hmm. And so while you may not like telling someone that they're not right for the team today, in the end, that's the right thing for the organization and ultimately for you.
Absolutely. And also for the team. I've had marketing teams where weak performers or performers that were just not in the right role as the company had evolved past their skill set. It really can impact the team and team morale as well. So which kind of goes into a question we have here about, can you address, and also Cody, your question is perfect and I'm going to end on that one, so I will come back to it. But Gary, can you address how you coach your portfolio companies' go-to-market teams? Should there be dedicated technical resources or should that be managed by IT or managed by the marketing team? So, getting the team and the tech right is critical. So what's your advice there?
I'll put my little IT hat on for a second. So there are two different issues here. Issue number one is, does the MarTech that you're bringing into the system work with our system? Mm-hmm. Like, am I creating my own little island here when there's another system of record, when there is another particular piece of technology that we need to ensure works? And I'll also say, also delivers the security and compliance that your organization may need. So that's IT. They need to know that and do that. Marketing's job, though, is to own the technology. And I like it in marketing ops. I love marketing ops folks that are also ninjas in Marketo and ninjas on 6 Sense platforms and ninjas and making sure the data is flowing correctly between the CRM system and the marketing automation system. And so I absolutely believe that you need, that's why I said after demand gen and product marketing, I want marketing operations. And that marketing operations person has got to be the person that really owns the MarTech stack.
I'm going to give a shout out to Joe on my team, who is a desperately needed hire to bring some of that technical skill set into the marketing team. And it really is pivotal and really is critical. So if there are any last minute questions for people who are going to throw them in now, this will not be the last time that you get the opportunity to meet with Gary and other experts in his team. But we're thrilled that you joined us live to understand why marketing is such a critical piece of the scale up journey. And why our Center of Excellence, of which Gary Service here is the operating partner and leads the team, works day in and day out with all of our portfolio companies. So on that, Gary, oh, okay, Ricky, you got in with another quick question. Oh, no, same one. So on that, Gary, I'm going to leave with this question. And it's going to be asking you to kind of pick your favorite child. But you work with companies all across the portfolio, all across the world, and you've done hundreds and hundreds of projects. What do you think your favorite project has been? How have you been able to push that company specifically further than ever before, or further than they thought possible? And what were some of the biggest takeaways that you had?
So I'm going to tell you this story, and I want to preface it by saying I take no credit for the company's success. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but like in the end, there are choices that are made. But if you don't know how to drive product market fit, if you don't know how to get the right team to get all of these things aligned, like my advice is just that, it's advice. But I'm going to talk about Monday. And the reason I'm going to talk about Monday.com, it was literally probably one of the first companies we worked with. And an incredibly beautiful and like smart team that with a product that was just awesome and full of potential. And unfortunately, it was called DaPulse. And despite you believing that name is reminiscent of a bad 90s rap group, yes, exactly. The team was so self-aware. Like, I remember the meeting, they came in, we were having a workshop on like figuring out what we needed to do with this. This was like one of the first things we did after investment. And they're like, let us show you like our typical social feed here. Love the product, hate the name. DaPulse, are you kidding? And this was an issue. And so, we spent an incredibly thought-provoking session on what it means to create a brand, what a name means, what is it that your brand's going to stand for, how are we going to do that? And we came up with several ideas, and then we worked to get them on an online testing platform to test the names to see what it meant. And Monday was really crazy in that Monday, for some people, is like, oh, Monday, I got to go to work. Others are like, Monday, fresh start, butterflies and bunny rabbits. More people thought the latter than the former. And, we worked with them, and they went and, as a great company that they are, really drove an incredible opportunity, and it built us into a great portfolio company success.
I love that story. I'd never heard that before. For me, when I think of Monday, and I use Monday.com religiously, look, I'm probably in the camp of, Monday, but I know I can use Monday.com to make my Monday a little bit easier. So even for the people in the first camp, it's still a very powerful, name. So Gary, thank you so much for joining me live today to talk about Scale Up Strategies, the Marketing Center of Excellence. And we're getting lots of thank yous. So yes, a big thank you from me and the audience.
Oh, it was great. And obviously, I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. Work with some of the greatest companies in the world. So it makes it a little bit easier as well. So all good things. Thank you, Nikki.
Have a great day.
Take care now.